21st Century Wash, Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene, Advanced Technologies and Action for Peace. Now, this is coming out of the Natural Fusion, and this is the greatest scale humanitarian disaster on planet Earth at this time. And everybody could think of something that's more immediate than this. But I'm going to give you some shocking numbers that most people are not aware of. And this is why for the last few years, I've really been promoting after Polio Plus, we need to look at WASH, water, sanitation, and hygiene as the next big project. I think it's been about $5 billion gone into the Polio Plus. This will be probably 20 billion or more, and that's an understatement. It should be much larger than that. But if you look at this map, this will give you an idea of the places, these with the bright red, the deep purple, the yellows. These are areas that are already at stress for either lack of proper water or no water. And this is something that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed now, because when you hear these numbers, this is the numbers by WHO and UNICEF, and this is a prelude to the speaker that we're having today. 2.2 billion people lack safe drinking water, 2.2 billion. Remember, we're about 7.8 billion on planet Earth. 4.2 billion really have no sanitation. That's over half of the world's population with no sanitation. And when you get overseas, you understand what's really going on as far as illness, disease, and the general lack of just willingness to work within a society. And over 3 billion people do not have basically any water for hand washing, let alone a shower. So if you think of the African continent, the average family of 6 members uses about 3.5 gallons a day. 3.5 gallons a day. Here we're using probably 125 plus a day for most of the people in this room and society. So it's it's a dire situation. There's down at the very bottom, the world counts 3,575,000 people in the last survey they did die from water-related diseases or no water. That's a huge, huge number. And we think of all the things that we're doing as far as trying to protect humanity. There's 70.8 million people displaced, IIDPs, internationally internally displaced persons. 41.3 of those are actually internally displaced, so they're not counted as refugees. So they're just place and stateless people still within their own borders. They just disappear, and that's very, very unfortunate. But the outcome of all this, the number one thing, as the United States CIA, you know what that's all about, but they do a World Fact Book every year. This is water and conflict. They say the number one global conflict is over water. So it used to be, oil, and they say water is the new oil. So when you look at these numbers, 4.2 billion without basic sanitation, 3 billion can't even wash their hands, 2.2 billion without drinking water. This is a disaster in the making. So this is leading up to our speaker today. This is Alan Weiss of Global Water Group. He's been 40 years looking at this issue. So even though this is his inventions, his innovations, he's really a true humanitarian at heart. But over half the population needs to have, as it said, modular, mobile, deployable, off-grid, which means using renewable energy, safe and resilient, safe drinking water, and then wastewater recycling repurposing systems. No sludge, no order. I'm reading this for you because all of this is going to be coming up, but it goes down to the bottom, the portable effluent. The systems that he has actually will take any kind of water that exists, brown water, black water, salt water, what have you, and turn it into pure drinking water. So these are some of the ones that are focused on this. David is here, May, Bill. But ESRAG, I'm actually a member of that, also a member of this Rotary Action Group for Peace. The reason this is up here in RCAT is that what's happening in the world, the natural fusion between the major focus of Rotary #1, which is world peace, reconciliation, and reconciliation. And then the other is the environment. And this is happening naturally. So it's not something, this is something I've been talking about, as you know, literally my whole life. But as far as our TV programs and all that, this is something that's just naturally happening. It's peace and the environment goes hand in hand. And this is something we're finding, and we talked about, you know, the India and the Pakistan ICCs. That's what they're fighting between their two countries, fighting over land, fighting over water resources, but yet they can agree about the environment. So this is Alan M. Weiss. He's waiting for us out in Arlington, Texas. And again, we're going to be looking at some of his systems that are actually being able to create what's called now new water. Israel is already there, has been there for a number of years. Many others, you know, are going to have to get used to this because we're flat running out of water all across the world. And when you saw that map at the beginning, you can see all these areas across the globe are actually drying out. Just look at the western part of the United States. Massive droughts, at the same time, massive flooding. So you have, it's almost like mutual destruction. We keep calling all these acts of God and, you know, acts of nature. It's not. It's created by us, human beings. And so we have to, you know, get very busy about this. This young man, you're going to be hearing from him now, is been doing this for about 40 years, just like I have, 40 plus. And Alan, I think you're here, and we're going to go right into his slide deck.
This is water. And whenever I give a talk about water, I always have to start the same way. And I talk about Water 101. Water 101 is how to purify water. I acquired Global Water in 1995. It was already about a 5-year-old company. I knew the owners, and they hadn't really brought it into focus as to what they should do, but they'd already been providing systems for the US military, small scale. They told me they had the best water system in the world and I should buy it. And I know that water is the biggest problem on this planet. I've known that for many, many years. And it took me a while after I bought the company to actually prove to myself just how good this was. But in 1996, I went to a meeting in Washington that was a World Health Organization on water, and they had about 600 people there, and we were demonstrating some of our systems. And I listened to the speaker from WHO, and he said, you know, to get purified water, there's only 3 things you have to do. One is you have to remove parasites. 2, you have to remove hazardous chemicals. And 3, you have to kill bacteria and viruses. And if you do those 3 things, you got the best water in the world. Unfortunately, he said, there probably isn't a municipal system in the United States that does all 3 of those things. And they're not that complicated. So I said to myself as I'm listening to this in the hallway, I said, gee, I'm glad I bought this company because we do all 3 of those things. What do you have to do? First of all, to remove parasites, you have to filter down to 1 micron or below. And 1 micron, you don't see anything in the water. If you had a glass of water, you wouldn't see anything below 22 microns. So when you get to 1 micron, you're way down there. That'll remove the pathogens. The second thing you have to do is you have to get rid of hazardous chemicals, heavy metals, insecticides, pesticides, radon. That's not a filtration process. It's a holding process. You have to absorb it and adsorb it until you get rid of everything that's in the water. And the third thing you have to do is you have to kill bacteria and viruses. But the World Health Organization has warned us, what are we all doing? We're using chlorine to kill bacteria and viruses. But chlorine in water that hasn't been purified up to that point, and most systems don't either filter down to 1 micron or don't get rid of your hazardous chemicals. The chlorine creates carcinogens. So it keeps us from getting sick today when we drink the water, but it kills us in the long run with cancer. And I would probably guess that half the cancer deaths in the United States and probably around the world or more are caused by the water. So water is probably the #1 killer in the planet, as well as it's what we require to survive. The second thing that happens with water as we learn about it is that wastewater is the #1 killer. Between wastewater sludge that is passed all over the world. I mean, it just goes into our ground, it goes in our air, it goes everywhere. And that's the #1 killer. There are over 2 million deaths from the wastewater sludge, and you add another 1.5 million from wastewater effluent that comes out of everybody's municipal wastewater systems. So those are the 2 main problems with regard to water. And I have dedicated these last almost 30 years to the point of just finding the ways to make the best water purification processes and the best wastewater processes that you can make. So just repeating a little bit about what Dr. Sam said, more than half of today's global population needs modular, mobile, deployable, off-grid, safe, and resilient wastewater recycling. Reproposing systems with no sludge, no odor, minimum maintenance, and the other end to come out with potable water. COVID is this pandemic has been horrific. And now they're discovering that they can judge how strong the COVID is in your community by testing the wastewater. And just 2 nights ago in Dallas, that was the highlight of the news, that they found that our COVID has increased in our wastewater, so we can expect a little bit of an uptick coming here. But if we eliminated all of the viruses in the wastewater that comes out, then you wouldn't have any passing it on to the next level. They never talk about the fact that effluent from wastewater systems go downstream, and the next 5 towns on average pick that up for their drinking water. Along the way, besides our water purification systems that we have made primarily for the military, Global Water has been in the providing systems for the US military for 90% of our business. Special forces, every branch of special forces. They don't leave the country to go fight a war without our backpacks, and we build all the way up to base camp systems. And that's what we've done. About 20 years ago, they came to me and said, could we clean up the effluent from a wastewater system? And I said, sure, we can do that. And they introduced me to another company that reduces the amount of sludge in a wastewater system. Doesn't totally eliminate it, but they wanted us to 2 companies to work together to improve on their base camps that they had. And we made a presentation to the military base, one of them in South Carolina, and I got all done listening to the president of the other company that makes this wastewater system, mostly for offshore drilling rigs. And before he was done, I realized how I could improve what they're doing and bring it to another level and eliminate all of the sludge in a wastewater system using air and enzymes. In this graphic, the orange part is a digester. It's an aerobic digester. And all it has in there is air circulating around. And we put enzymes in that create the bacteria that eat up the organic sludge. And in our system, we have no place to pull sludge out like every other wastewater system in the world. Every wastewater system pulls sludge out and they haul it away. They burn it. They use it for fertilizer. There's a lot of bad stuff in that sludge. We don't have any port on our system to remove sludge because we eliminate it with the bacteria. And while we're eliminating the sludge, we eliminate the methane, which is another real problem that every wastewater system has. So this area is going round and round with air, a lot of movement. And from there, it goes into a clarifier. Most clarifiers in wastewater systems everywhere on the planet actually let the sludge settle, and they have to pull the sludge from clarifiers. They're just a settling house. Well, we don't settle it. All the suspended solids that come into a clarifier that have a little bit of weight drop to the bottom. When they drop to the bottom, we have these wells with a vacuum pipe, and we vacuum out of that clarifier and put all those suspended solids back into the digester so that it keeps eating it up. Other suspended solids that are too light, they float to the surface. And we skim them off and put them back in the digester. So we're constantly recycling those suspended solids. And what comes through the clarifier goes into a recycling process where we capture every suspended solid down to about 5 microns. And then when that tank gets saturated, we back flush it and send all those solids back to the digester. So we're constantly keeping everything in the digester until it gets eaten away. What makes it through the recycling system is a water purification system that we have mastered. And our system then filters down to 1 micron or below, so we remove all parasites. We capture in a proprietary formula that we have all the hazardous chemicals, heavy metals, insecticides, pesticides, radon, everything. And then what comes out of that tank, we use ultraviolet, not chlorine, and we kill the bacteria and viruses. And what comes out of this end is the best potable water in the world. So we have 1 pipe of sewer water coming in. All the sludge in the end of 24 hours has gone, the organic sludge. And at the other end, we have 1 pipe coming out. And that's 100% reusable water. You may not drink it, but you can use it for anything you want. Agriculture, maintenance, as another source of water for your emergencies or anything else. And that's the system that we have now gotten patented in over 40 countries. And now we're bringing that out into the world of residential, public utilities, developments, so that everyone can have this quality of a wastewater process. This is an example of a 40-foot wastewater recycling system that we installed in South Africa. The US military asked us to put that into, instead of a 40-foot container, into two 20-foot containers. This slide shows assembling those two 20-foots together. Here's a smaller version that we made of our wastewater recycling system for the US EOD and the Seabees and the Navy SEALs. And they had this all over. And then we designed systems for base camps. So now we have it designed for communities. And whether you're going to have 500 people in a community or 5 million people in a community, it all works on this same graphic. Purify water coming in, use that water in your kitchens, bathrooms, sinks, and showers. That water flows down into this wastewater recycling system where we store that, and we use that in toilets, laundry, maintenance, everything we could do. And it's a constant flow of saving water. We've made designs for FEMA for workmen's camps after disasters. And this is how we would hook them all together to do that whole flow of water. This is a desalinization system that we use. Actually, this went to the Navy SEALs. We have desalinization systems all over the world. With humanity, someone came to us and said, listen, there was flooding in Honduras about 18 years ago. And they said, they're friends of mine there, and I got to get them some systems of yours that would purify the water for them. I'm going to fly it down in my little plane, and here's the size of my door. And we designed these two systems that day. He picked them up 2 days later, flew them to Honduras. 18 years later, one is still operating a hospital, and one is still operating a police department. This also is a mobile desalinization system. This gives you an idea how the company even started back in 1992. This was putting a water purification system at a refugee center in Turkey after an earthquake. And this big bladder of filling it with water that we purified so that the people would have water in those camps. And this was another purifier in that same camp that we had. And that pretty well covers what we're now doing, is looking to do this all over the world. Yesterday, I got a call from a group out of Nepal and India that want to send water systems and our wastewater systems to the Ukraine, which is going to take some time to rebuild. And we're going to start building those.
I have a simple question that I don't know the answer, so I hope you can give the answer. When we boil the water at a high level, the water, the H2O, goes up in the air and is very qualified, very clean, and can be brought back to nature with a cooling system. Why that simple thing is not done? There is a reason, right?
I'm not sure if you could repeat.
She's asking about boiling water and allowing it to evaporate. And so it's kind of like transpiration, but on a stove.
Yeah, I've been all over the world. There are many communities have to do it all the time. Even outside of Dallas, in a suburb, because there's an oil leak in a lake where their reservoir is. They say, don't drink the water, boil it for the next 3 days. Well, if we had a filter in there, our filter system, we would be able to give you purified water no matter what happens with a leak or anything else.
How much energy does it take to run one of these systems?
Well, a water purification in general is very low power. You're probably dealing with half of a kilowatt per 1,000 gallons. In our wastewater recycling system, we have it designed where it's going to take about 1.1 kilowatts per 1,000 gallons. If you had a desalinization system, you might be using 15 kilowatts to get close to that number. That's not the most optimum way to get purified water. And most desalinizations are not the best water in the world.
The units that he has, actually, they're all solar, wind powered. This is all renewable. And they go from backpack size literally to, you can produce all the water you need for Manhattan, as an example.
And we've been building systems for 31 years using
Yeah.
solar and wind.
That's what they requested, but they didn't have it.
Dr. Sam and Alan, thank you very much. This is an area of great interest. I've been in the water arena for like the last 10 years, and what you have is a decentralized wastewater treatment system as opposed to the big municipal systems. And there's a lot to be said for those. And I wish you well in getting your technology out there. The world needs it. And as Dr. Sam said, WASH, the water sanitation and hygiene, has been a big part of Rotary, but will probably be ever bigger. So, Alan, it's my pleasure to let you know that we'll be planting a tree in your honor. This is a tradition that our club has had for the last 30 years. We plant the tree in the honor of each of our speakers. This is in partnership with the National Park Service. It will be somewhere either on the National Mall, like down near the tidal basin, it's a replacement cherry blossom tree, or it might be in one of our downtown parks where we're retreeing the downtown parks of Washington, D.C. And we will be having a spring tree planting ceremony. We have heard from the National Park Service. Don't have a date yet, but that will be happening this year, finally, after a 2-year hiatus. We'll let you know about that, and if you can join us, that would be great. All right, so again, thank you very much for your presentation today on your amazing technology, and I wish you well in getting it out there to the world.